Hello everyone, this is the great Lord and Master Osiron, the Eternal, for a special episode of Bedtime with the Great Lord. Now I'm making a video on my bed right now. This is sort of a expansion of the Kundalini Grid that's first seen in Proof of God, the Proof of God series. This shows here all the numbers of the times tables 1 through 9 in the grid form, reduced. In each row, again, it produces a distinct repeatable code that repeats to infinity. You know, the ones tables do it, the two tables have their own special code, the threes have their own special code, 4s, 5s, 6, 7s, 8s, and 9 each has the same distinct code. And what that produces, of course, is what I have been calling the Kundalini Grid. And as you can see, the 3s and the 6, the 3, 6s, and 9s all separate and form this green grid here of 3, 6, and 9. And then in each individual square are what I call the material numbers. And each one of these squares reduces to 9. As you can see over here, I sort of have it drawn up in the grid form, and each 9 represents one of these squares here. And again, up top, you see how the single digit 0 through 9, why it's so important to acknowledge 0 is because the 0 is a placeholder for the 9. And when you push the numbers into each other, they cancel out to 9. That's why you do that, because the 0, as we've discovered in this series so far, isn't really 0. It only appears to be 0. It's really a whole nother universe unto of itself. That 0 is, that what is inside that 0 is 100% complete existence, just like everything else. It's just a different fractal. And you have to acknowledge that. You have to leave room for that other 9 to slide right into the space, and then it cancels out. And you see how the 3, 6, 9 grids line up. If you were to do that not using 0, but just 1 through 9, or 1 through 10, it would disrupt that grid. So that's what I mean when I say the Kundalini Grid. Now, what happens is very, very, very interesting. You see how I have the numbers broken down into colors? Well, that's of course masculine and feminine. And what that produces is a code over here that reveals itself in these dots, these dashes. See, what the dashes do, like some dashes are longer and shorter than others, and the reason that is because, as you can see with this upper row, they alternate right from the beginning. You got feminine, masculine, and on, one then the other. But in the second row, what happens is the first 4 numbers are all masculine, and then the last 4 are feminine. So that counts as one big dash, that counts as the second big dash. And then it has its distinct pattern all the way down. So when you break that down into dashes, connecting any repeating dash as one, each quadrant forms 10 dashes. And each quadrant also has 1 0 space, which just happens to be this 9. You see, these dashes are only using the inner 1 through 8 numbers. The 0s and the 9s aren't included in this. And so what it produces is 10 dashes for each quadrant, and then there's a 1 0 point in each quadrant. So what that produces is 40 dashes and 4 zeros, which is 4 and 4, and then 4 and 4 equals 8. And now each quadrant here also is comprised of 16 dashes. Okay, so 16 times 4 is 64. 64 becomes 1 again, as we know from the I Ching and several other sources. The work by Nassim Haramein, he deals with that. But 16 reduces to 7, and each quadrant is a 7, and we know from the tarot and the zodiac spiral in the rest of the series and other places that 7 represents actual fluids of the body. It's the chariot. So the fluids of the body is where the spirit first enters. The blood, the cerebrospinal fluid, and other fluids in the body are represented as a 7. And now what's interesting is sort of the way the numbers break down too of this grid. You can see over here I got a bunch of numbers. Now if we call each squared unit here a material unit, because the whole thing, as you can see, is comprised, counting the zeros and the nines, is made up of 100 units. You know, again, the numbers. But 36 of those units are material units. And then there's 24 3 and 6s. There is a total of 21 nines, but there's 9 nines that are actually on the grid, and there's 12 more nines that are on material rows. So meaning any row that has a material number has a 9 associated with it, and there's 12 of those. And now of those 21 nines, there's 17 outer. And now keep in mind the tarot cards that the tarot card trumps that are associated with these numbers. So you got the 21 nines, which is the world. But then you got 17 outer, which is this row here. 17 outer, and that's the star. You know, the star. But there's 4 inner, which is the emperor, or Aries and all that. But then when you keep going, there's also 19 zeros. And 19 is the card for the sun in the tarot. So that's pretty interesting. It's sort of alluding to the black sun. You know, the physical sun is what we see, but it's really, in this grid here, as one unit, there's comprised of 19 zero spaces. But those zero spaces are made for another row of nines to go into. That's why you allow for them. Because you can't not put that, because it'll disrupt the harmony of everything. That's the whole point. So, and then the last thing with that is you see all these numbers here. Well, how it breaks down when you reduce those is the 19 zeros reduced to 1, the 21 overall nines reduced to 3, the 24 3 and 6s, again, 3 and 6 is just a masculine and a feminine mask of Kundalini. 24 reduces to 6, and then the total material units is 36, and that reduces to 9. So it gives you the Kundalini code of 1 and 369, and how that applies to vortex math, and the idea that 1 is interchangeable and all that. So this is just a quick, simple video, special edition of Bedtime with the Great Lord, just to go over the Kundalini grid and some of the cool and finer points of how the numbers work and how it plays out. Stay tuned for a video coming up. I got another epic one coming up about the cube of Lord Osiron, one I just made. It's really powerful stuff on the way. So thank you and namaste.